View from the Gutters presents The Long Run, Episode 4.
There you go, Astro Boy, on your flight into space. Rocket high through the sky, for adventures soon you will make. Astro Boy bomb.
The Long Run is a show where we discuss books too long to discuss on a regular weekly show. And please note that this show has massive spoilers for this book. Please read the book before listening to the episode. On this episode, we discuss Urasawa's Pluto, and keep listening after the discussion to get some recommendations on books you might enjoy if you liked Pluto.
Get propelled, fighting monsters high in the sky.
Welcome to View from the Gutters, The Long Run, Episode 4.
4?
This
Question
is
mark?
4?
No, yeah, it's 4.
Which is notable because this means that every one of the principal members...
The regulars.
As much as we love Eric and Matt, they can't always be here. They have
They
other
got
obligations.
kids and...
They're much more responsible than we are.
Yeah.
Means each one of the regulars has picked a long run.
Yeah.
And they've been successful, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we forget, I'm Andrew Chard.
I'm Joe Preddy.
I'm Tobiah Panchin.
And I'm Cade Reynolds.
And while we're thanking people, I wanted to give a big old thank you to Jeremy, who gave us an actually surprisingly sizable donation today.
Yeah, thank you.
We really appreciate it when our audience gives us donations. It helps us with web hosting and other costs associated with the podcast. And it just means that we can put out a better show for you guys.
Absolutely.
So, Jeremy, thank you very much. We're going to put it to good use.
Yeah.
Yes, and can continue being awesome.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to thank Jason Hammond for an amazing comment on our Facebook page. I commented back and I said, I love you, sir, but I just wanted to say it again on the air. I love you, sir.
Yeah, he
Yes.
gave us a very nice comment. And it seems like we've been getting a lot of new listeners lately.
I think we have, yeah.
I just wanted to say welcome to anybody who's just kind of jumping onto the podcast. We're really glad to have you if you have the time. Rate us on iTunes, upvote our YouTube page. Just
Twitter us.
tell
Yeah.
all the people that you
Subscribe
know
to
about
our
how awesome
YouTube.
our show is because we
Find
love
us
to
on
get lots of feedback.
MySpace and read our Zenga.
Also on the more primitive
we're on
version of
Friendster.
Facebook, Mug Scroll, which was a primitive English version. I'm sorry, I'm making a community reference.
I
And
will
if anybody
not
still
friend
has
you on either
Friendster,
live journal
Yeah.
or
hit me
dead
up.
journal.
Friendster, we've got that.
Friendster, yes, definitely.
Not really.
Pretty much, yeah. It's great to get feedback. It's great to know that. While it's
people
great to
enjoy-
hear that we're helping people make decisions that they enjoy and make, enrich their comic reading experience. If you guys weren't listening, then we'd just be talking to ourselves, and we do enough of that as it is.
Yeah.
So that means,
I certainly talk to you more than any human being should be forced to do.
it's really, you should feel sorry for these guys because they can't just turn off the podcast. But
can't.
The podcast
Really-
really is my life.
it really, and I think I can speak for all of us. It means a lot to us to know that you guys are listening and that you're giving us feedback because that means that you care, and that's nice to know. That definitely makes me feel like this is not just me yelling about comic books. Like if
We've
we're
been doing
entertaining-
this for
a while,
a long time.
Yeah.
A couple years. And so it feels good to be getting feedback that
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
overwhelmingly positive. So thank you,
and
everybody.
speaking of feedback, thanks to Brian May, who takes some time every week to make a really long, well thought out comment on one of our discussion threads about the book
Absolutely.
we're talking about.
Absolutely.
He's obviously reading all the things we're talking about, which, I am concerned about how much comics I read on a
right?
weekly basis, and he's not even on a podcast.
No,
So,
no. And,
hey, Brian,
yeah.
keep talking to us, because we love the stuff you say.
And if you haven't commented on the Facebook page, tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us what you want us to change. We won't change it, but it'll be nice to hear it anyways. We may change it. I don't know. We have a good track record
Well,
for...
if that is, please take Joe off the podcast. We'll
not,
definitely
it's not
change
going to
that.
happen.
Yeah,
I
we'll do
am this
that.
fucking podcast.
We'll
and
get him
everybody
right,
knows
right
it.
away.
All right.
He's been
All
muted
right.
for 4 episodes straight now. He doesn't know it. That's fine.
I was talking to our very generous benefactor earlier because he's an old friend of mine, and we had not had not talked for a while, and we got in touch with each other on Facebook, and we talk to each other very rarely now, and so I was pretty surprised. But I told him about the bag when Chard would just be like, "Oh, I'm editing Joe out," and I would say, "Well, I'm taking those and making my own podcast where it's pretty much just me responding to people that aren't there."
I'm gonna give you those.
Which I think is I'd be totally okay with. You know,
What I really want to do now is edit together an argument that you're having with yourself.
It would
I
be
have
like the
more than
30
enough
Rock where
sound.
Jack is negotiating against it. That's like an infinite loop argument.
Yeah.
Nobody ever
That would be
wins
great.
I think I have enough resources
So-
for that.
Now that we've had like fucking a ridiculous number of announcements, let's talk about Pluto. And I know that Cade wanted to start off by saying something. So,
Yes.
Cade.
I wanted to start off the show with a secondary disclaimer. I know that there is a disclaimer when you start the podcast about
Warning.
about spoilers, and we do massively spoil the books. And yet I know for a fact, because I know people personally who do this, who just listen to the show to listen to us bitch about each other. Or
at each other.
More like at each other.
at each
I
other.
bitch
And
about
about.
Joe a lot.
Yeah.
Oh God,
Joe really is a bitch.
Yeah, he's
catty
a
bitch.
beautiful bitch.
I am, and you know there may be no two people I bitch about as much as Chard and Toby.
Yay.
That are Jeff Johns, but I don't.
We're in good company.
I have a great deal of affection for Chard and Toby. Not true for Jeff Johns.
So
You guys love each other.
So I just wanted to say that I feel that in the case of Pluto, not reading it and listening to us would be doing yourself a disservice. I think that it's a really good book, and the payoff may not come right away, but it will come. And I think that listening to us talk about it before you read it is a little bit detrimental. So
I really do this in the hopes that people are
Are
playing
playing
along at
along.
home. I know that it's delusional to be like, oh, well, they'll go get the book, and in the week that we're reading it, they'll read it, and then they'll listen, and they'll have read it, and it'll be a good discussion. I know that a lot of people don't have the time to do that, and that's fine. And I'm glad that you're listening, even if you're not reading the books. Like, I'm happy for that. But I do really think that it helps if you read the books that we're talking about.
Well, I mean, optimally, you're playing along.
Yeah.
But, like, they've done studies because people complain about, like, movie trailers that give away the entire movie. But,
Those are the most popular movies.
yeah, when they do that, the movies sell more tickets.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, if you're like me and you just do not care about spoilers, hell, listen to the episode
Yeah.
twice before
Yeah.
you even think about checking out the book.
And I'm the same way. Like, I don't necessarily... While it's nice to get pleasantly surprised every once in a while, I'm the kind of person that's constantly trying to guess the ending. And so that can actually take away from my enjoyment of a book every once in a while.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I think I can count on one hand the number of works I've read where the twist is really so critical that if you know it ahead of time, it ruins the movie.
book, yeah. I think for me, the reading itself is what's enjoyable. Although I can appreciate what Kate's saying. And it leads into something I want to say, which is...
I would go crazy if I listened to a show that told me what was
What
going on.
was going on?
I am that guy. Like, I'm
Fuck
the
it,
guy
I
that's
can't
like,
deal with this,
If,
I'm not
if
reading
you
any-
tell me a character's name that doesn't get named until like the third issue, I'm like, fuck it, you spoiled it for
You
me.
spoiled the whole
we
fucking
just,
thing.
we
All of
just
it.
talked about how you hate Netflix because it tells you what the thing is about when
I
you're
do
about to
hate
watch
that.
it. Like, not a spoiler, but just like, this is a
That's
show about a
hilarious.
guy who
Yeah.
is sad about feelings. And you're
Yep.
like, I don't want to watch
this
it.
is a
I'm
show
done.
about a guy. Oh, I'm done.
Well,
this is a show about people. I'm done.
it
This
sets
show
you
has
up.
a dog. Oh, I'm done.
It gives you a preconceived notion of like what it's going to be about, and sometimes the Netflix tags are like really badly written and like don't actually tell you what the show's about. And you'll watch it and you'll be like, "When the fuck is the thing that this isn't?"
Yeah,
at
like you
all
talked
like what
about
you
this
said
one
it
thing that was an incredibly minor plot point.
And I hate that. So, and I don't like when things are overhyped either. I really don't like that. So, like, I'm the kind of person that likes to go into things blind.
Yeah.
Like, people will say, the best way to pitch a book to me is to just be like, read this. I think it's really interesting. You'll probably enjoy it. And I'll go, okay. And I'll get to it eventually.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be overhyped, and I don't want you to like tell me exactly what's going to happen in every single
Yeah.
moment of the thing. But I want to be sold on something. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this like, you know, it's about a robot detective who's trying to solve an impossible crime because robots can't kill people, but theirs is one.
Yeah.
And then
There
like,
is one.
you know, I want to know a little bit about it. Like, I want to have an idea of what the thing is framed in my mind before I go into it.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of that.
I want to bring up something real quick since we're talking about Pluto. I want to bring attention to the fact that Pluto has to live in a doghouse, and that's really not fair because Goofy is also a dog, and he gets to drive a car and play golf with Mickey.
And he's married to a cow.
And he's married to a fucking cow.
How does that work?
Wow, rude.
Solidarity with Pluto, right? Okay,
I do not think that Clara would appreciate being described as a cow.
I'm talking about
she actually is a cow.
She
though.
actually is a cow. I have a
And-
great deal of respect for Clara.
Man, she's such a heifer, though.
Yeah. I think that Mickey's just racist.
I agree, and I think we
Specious?
need to
Specious.
specious, and
That's
I think
what I
we
was looking
need
for.
to. I think we just.
That's fine.
I think
Nobody
it
likes
reinforces
Mickey
the
anyway.
good dog, bad dog paradigm, which is a very hurtful, hateful, and damaging one in our society. And having said that,
who likes Mickey the best anyway? No one.
I actually stole that from an Even Stevens episode. I actually stole that from Shia LaBeouf because I thought it would be incredibly ironic to plagiarize something
But then you
from a
cited
plagiarist.
the source.
But then I cited him
So
because
you ruined it.
I'm
ruined
not
it.
well. But
You ruined it.
I mean, I'm too.
ruined.
I just can't do that.
Can we talk about Pluto now?
Let's talk
We're
about.
recording for an hour and a half, and we haven't
let's-
talked about Pluto yet.
Let's talk about Pluto. Chard, you pitched it, or you picked it, I guess.
Yeah.
So why don't you start by talking about it?
Okay. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know that I'm the best person to start on this one because I don't know that I have a ton to say other than I really like it. I think that you guys should read it.
Should I start then?
Yeah, I mean, I
I
thought.
fucking hated this book.
Did you?
No.
Well,
Okay, I liked about 65%
we
of
did.
it.
Toby and I did talk a little bit about this off the air, so I was surprised. I was like, "Man, did you go back and read it?"
I think I can. I mean, I think like I liked it overall, but there were definitely things in it that I was like,
Well, like,
I will be.
I feel like I
admit,
liked the first 3/4 of the book,
Yeah.
and then the last quarter of it, like, it kind of went off in a different direction because it was tied to the original Astro Boy story. And they also never resolved a number of plot points that I was confused about and wanted more information on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In that sense, I was dissatisfied.
I
by
had
it.
the opposite reaction. I think they wrapped up too much at the end because I was like, "Oh, and now we get to see where that guy that's like 500 Zeus a body comes from, and
Well,
we
I'm
get to see like the last trade, issue volume 8. If you read them in the manga trades, like I did, that it's just all wrap up." And that's my least favorite part of the whole book. Like, I love 1 through 7.
You must have hated The Return of the King.
I do. I really. I literally. When
He's said this
that's
before.
my favorite movie to type through. When I was in college, I was a history major before I dropped out, and I would handwrite all my papers before I would type them. So I'd have like a 50-page paper written, and then I would go type it up, and that's a lot of fucking typing. And the way that I would do it is I'd put on the Lord of the Rings extended edition because you only have to change the disc like 3 times to get 14 hours. And I always would finish typing right at the beginning of Return of the King and go, "Oh, thank God," and then not watch that movie. And that's what motivated me to get through typing fast, is because I did not want to watch the second half of Return of the King. Because there's parts of that movie that I really like,
And see, I actually...
but a lot of that movie I'm like, I could leave this.
And I love how the ending of that movie is the second half.
Yeah, it really is.
It's my favorite movie of the 3, actually, because I hate the ends of the first movie and the end of the second movie because I just feel that, like, why did you stop there?
Yeah, to me, it's one 14-hour movie. And
Well,
I
yeah.
try to watch it as such.
Well, I mean, it's 6 books that are like one story.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
it
only
never,
3
there's no.
books.
Yeah,
Well,
no, but each book is 2 books.
Originally,
Okay,
they were
I mean-
published.
No,
as-
literally, each book is 2 books.
Yeah,
Split in half.
it
There's
says book 1
It's
and
like
book
book
two.
1,
Book one
book
and
2,
book
book
two,
3,
yeah,
book 4. And like, the Fellowship of the Ring is, I guess, the odd man out, but in the Two Towers and the Return of the King, like, half the story is Aragorn and company, and half the story is Frodo and company. And you do not see Frodo in the first half of the book at all. It's just all Aragorn. And then you get to the end of that book and the beginning of the next book, and then that part is all Frodo. Mm-hmm. It's like the entire Lord of the Rings are books 4 and 5 of A Song of Ice and Fire.
All
AKA
right.
Game
where
of
they
Thrones.
where they tell opposite stories.
Right,
in each one.
because
Yeah.
Martin
No,
like split the books in half because it was
Yeah.
too long.
Yeah.
But talking about Pluto more specifically.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked the beginning part where like he's a robot detective and you're learning about the world and how the robots interact with it.
Totally my favorite
And there's
part,
like
too.
this mystery because a robot killed a man, and how is that possible? And like he's acting like a serial killer, and so he goes to visit the one serial killer robot.
Yeah.
Who is also kind of a problem for me because I don't feel like they ever really explain where he came from, or spoilers for the end, how the fuck he like just got out of prison and like dragged himself as half a robot
Yeah.
all the way from Germany to the United States of Thracia. Like that whole thing was kind of weird for me.
Right.
But like the beginning of that story was really good up through the death of I'm
Gesicht.
Gesicht?
Gesicht. Yeah, that's how I've always said it.
I was
Gesicht.
saying it in my head Geschacht, and I knew that was just terribly wrong.
Yeah.
Joe and I looked it up, and it was like there was a JT at the end instead of a CHT in the phonetic, so it was like...
Yeah, there's a couple of different translations.
So it was like Gesicht.
But
Gesicht.
I'm going to call him Robot Detective.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Call him Rick Deckard.
I liked everything about his story
He's
up
way
until
cooler
he
than Rick
died,
Deckard. I agree.
and the story became much more about
Adam.
Tetsuan Atom, and basically was just kind of doing what I assume is straight atomic robo. Like, he fights Pluto, and who is the strongest robot?
You mean
and all
Astro
that
Boy.
stuff. What did I say?
Atomic Robo.
I'm sorry, Astro
You
Boy.
got Atomic Robo on the brain again.
Yeah, that's
happens to you.
never not going to be the case.
Yeah, no, the end of the story is very much how the second half of that Astro Boy story works, where like Pluto shows up and he's like, I've defeated all 7 of the greatest robots, and then you're like, but wait, Astro Boy's not really dead, and then he comes back and they like fight, and then there's a volcano or something. I don't remember.
Yeah.
'Cause I watched those episodes of the original show, and you can go back and watch the animated series, and there are 2 episodes in that, and there are, I think, 7 short stories in the original comic. It's like a 7-part story.
Right.
The world's strongest robot, Pluto.
Yeah, I agree. To me, Gesicht is definitely for me, he's most interesting character, and I actually am kind of bummed out with what happens to him.
Yeah.
Just because I feel as if there's a lot more going on than needs to be. And I understand that's kind of part of the whole, like, manga thing. I think that there's a lot.
That may be more Urasawa than just
That
manga,
might be
because,
more Urasawa, yeah. That
having
may
read
not-
more of his other stuff, like, he likes to throw a lot of threads out that don't lead anywhere.
And then
And
is
that's
like,
incredibly annoying to me. Like,
yeah.
I mean, right off the bat, I was interested in this story because they were doing the whole, like, robots. Like, robots can't kill
Yeah.
humans. But it skips 100% past the part that almost every other robot story deals with, which is robots don't have the same rights as humans. It goes, no, they have all this, like, they
Yeah.
can have families
Yep.
and jobs and do everything that people can do.
Yeah.
Like, it skips 100% past that. And I thought that was really interesting. And I wanted more about that that I didn't really get because it was distracted by fighting and who is the strongest.
Well, you mean the robot council that decide, like the council of scientists, the ones that are being killed
Right.
in the story.
And I mean, that's like,
I guess I don't really need that part
And,
of
like,
it
there
because
was-
I
and
think
there
that
were
would have
so
been
many
kind of boring.
different
to hear.
kinds of robots. Like, there
Yeah,
were the
it's-
robots who looked completely human.
Yeah.
And then there were the robots that looked like human, except they were wearing weird helmets. And then there were the robots that just looked like robots.
Well, there were robots even more primitive than that. There were robots,
Yeah.
like factory robots, that were just like an arm.
Yeah.
Like there was like the classes of AI went from like no AI in those arm machine robots to like, oh, they're kind of AI in these less advanced. And what's funny is the more advanced the AI, the more they pretend to be human.
Yeah, which
Like
is
the more
really interesting to
human-like
me.
they are. Yeah.
And like the idea of a robot detective trying to solve a crime where a robot killed a human was really interesting to
Yeah.
me.
well, and I think for me, it started out kind of basic, like, kind of procedural, like cops looking for clues and stuff. But what I really got wrapped up in is Gesicht and what was going on to him and why he was having these nightmares and why, like, when it comes out that his memory maybe was erased, I'm like, well, what was going on there?
Yeah.
And then I think the minute because I really was like kind of reading it, but not really involved in it. And then the Adolf storyline happens.
Yeah.
Which at first I was like, what the fuck is this? And that was easily the thing that I was most interested in.
Yeah.
And that just fucking goes away.
Yeah.
It
Like,
just
that was
fucking,
a great
it just,
storyline.
that was like that to me was much more interesting than the Pluto story or the whole thing with that. Because at that point I was kind of like, all right, I'm familiar enough with this kind of thing to know that there's going to be one of two outcomes at the end of this book. There's going to be a big knockdown, drag-out fight, and the hero's going to win just by this much. Or, much more likely, it's going to be a thing where, like, the hero fights to a certain point and then goes, no, this won't work. We need to take a different path, which is
Kind of what happened.
Well, I mean, it's unsatisfying.
It's actually like the first time I read this, I was like, I had the reaction that I have when I read a lot of Urasawa's books, which are like he's great at setup and then
and
not so amazing.
the delivery is a little
at the
bit
endings, but I really like the end, the actual end of this book, the resolution of Adam's story. Like my favorite part is after he's done fighting Pluto, and they're just like laying down in the grass together, watching the sky, and then a star goes by, and he's like, make a wish, and he's like, what did you wish for? And he's like, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing that you wished for.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really, like, that's amazing.
I
And
wish
then
they could-
and then Bora shows up, and they
Yeah.
have to, and then Pluto, like, sacrifices himself to save Bora.
Which I thought
was
was
great. And, like, also, he shows off his rocket fist, which I'm like, every robot needs rocket fist.
I do agree with
And
that.
he used
I
it
do
to
agree
send
with that.
Adam to safety. And I was
Yeah.
like, I like all of the robots in this. Like, I love Mont Blanc, even though he's not really
He's
a
not
character
really-
in this.
yeah.
But they just make you love him by having him be the people's champion, essentially.
Well, I did like the robots in here. I just kind of felt that I felt like they all had timers over their heads.
Oh, they definitely do.
And that kind of takes away for it. And so
I think that adds
like
to it
that,
for me because I want to get to know them as much as I can before they go away.
And that's what kind of like there's a point at which that goes away and becomes the background, and it becomes entirely about Gesicht and this guy who's having to deal with it, and that became much more interesting. Gesicht is definitely the most interesting character to me.
Yeah.
Because of
Well,
the fact that he's kind of like straddling this line.
We talked on a previous episode that I edited and don't remember what it is. It may be the bonus episode. But that is about how sometimes when you're writing a work of fiction or a piece of fiction that you make all the wrong decisions before you even like put pen to paper or start filming, like by choosing the wrong characters to tell the story through or whatever. And I think that Urasawa does the opposite of that. Like I think he always makes fantastic choices at the beginning of the story.
And then they get
because I think he picked the perfect person to tell it through.
Yeah.
With Gesicht, I think he's a fantastic character. Like this would not have been nearly as interesting if you told it from Adam's point of view. And I think that he picked the fucking perfect time to start telling the story.
Oh,
too.
absolutely.
Like
absolutely.
you start mid-case almost, you know?
Yeah.
Like he
Well, I
could
mean,
have.
that's how every good police procedural story
Yeah.
starts. Like a crime has taken place.
But this isn't even just a police procedural because the real crime took place like several years
it's
ago
linking
in
back,
the Persian
and-
War. Like that's where you
the
could have started.
39th Central Asian
And, like,
conflict,
that's
which
the-
is a ridiculous name.
I feel,
Yeah,
and
I
I
like
think
that.
it goes back to
I hate
something.
that. That bothered me throughout the entire story. Like, are you talking about like ever? Like, there have been exactly 39 conflicts in Central Asia, or since a certain point? And if it's from a certain point, like that's a lot of conflict.
I thought they were talking about latitude or longitude, like the 39th.
like 39th parallel, but
Yeah.
then it's also Central Asia.
No, totally. I get that. The whole
Like,
thing
it
to
was
me
just a
was
ridiculous
like,
name, and the more they repeated it, the more ridiculous it
It just
seemed.
felt like a very sci-fi thing to call it.
It felt like a very anime.
Whenever I
Yeah.
saw
Yeah,
that,
totally.
it became, it became an acronym in my head. Like I would just like skip over that to the end of where it said conflict, and just in my head it was just an acronym
Yeah.
that they're referring to.
I
I think though, the moment I fell in love with this book was the story about North Number 2
me too.
and the old guy. I really fell in love with those characters.
You know
and
what's funny is that I read this right after I watched an episode of Big O with some friends of ours.
Big O.
Where like it was almost the exact same thing. Like it was a robot who had learned how to play the piano.
oh, I've seen that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea.
I've never heard of this show.
Oh, the Big O's
my
great. You'd
God,
like
that
it.
show is ridiculous. I think you would love it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I do too.
Forged in the name of good.
Well, we have a list, an ongoing list
God.
that we
I
are.
keep forgetting that Cade apparently didn't own a TV for 100 years.
Well, and
hasn't
he just,
seen
I
anything.
I'm not a big
actually
anime
didn't.
fan.
In
But-
fact, I still don't have TV.
well, that's a good.
I-
Yeah, but you do have a TV, and you have access to the biggest repository of knowledge in human existence.
No,
My
that is
brain.
true.
were
I
we
mean, I
not
get-
talking about that?
What?
This is
My
probably,
brain.
this is probably
my
the
brain.
worst description of a show ever, but from what I understand of Big O, because I've only seen parts of it, it's what if everybody in this one city all lost their memories and there was a Batman and he piloted a giant mech?
Yeah, it's pretty much
Kinda that, yeah.
like in a city that cannot remember its past. Batman drives a giant robot that is like totally mysterious and travels on a train under the city and is fucking made of awesome.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene in Pacific Rim where the robot punches and then these hydraulics like slam home.
They like
that is
it's like
totally
jet
Big
turn,
O
right?
has a punch where he punches and a piston comes out of his elbow and then it slams home and it just blows a hole in anything he's just punched. And it is incredibly satisfying.
That's his form blazing sword move.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's awesome. And Roger Smith is also very awesome. And Dorothy, his robot maid, is also awesome. I love Big O.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
Cade was talking about North Number 2.
Yes.
he was
Which
talking about
I
North
want
Number
to talk
2.
about too. So, Cade, what made you fall in love in that story?
Like his persistence. In the first pages of seeing him, it's kind of hard to explain because there wasn't much of it, but you somehow saw inside of the character without actually seeing inside of the character.
I think they do that really well in this series. There's a couple times, especially just looking at the faces of the robots, where they just show it to you enough times that by the third panel that you're seeing that same robot face, it's changed somehow in your mind. Like, you do a lot, at least I do, and a lot in reading it where, like, you're showing it to me for so long that I'm like trying to infer some emotion from it, and that shapes the way I feel that robot is feeling.
I think that this comic is definitely a great example of how different manga pacing is from Western
Oh,
comics.
yeah,
absolutely.
the pacing
really
in this
have
book
to
is
appreciate it.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, you
No,
have
it's
to work to
insane.
appreciate it.
Today at 1:00, I had just finished through chapter 40 or something. It was like the end of the 6th volume, and I literally read the next 20 chapters. I could not believe how quickly I read it because
I read 3 Tankobons in one night because I could not put it down.
And
Yeah.
I think the thing is that
I read it all today.
while there are a few things like North Number 2 and who's the fighter robot? The one with the-
Brando?
Brando.
Brando.
There's 2 fighter robots.
Hercules was a little bit more, but like I knew why they were there. I knew it was going to happen, and I just felt that and we've talked about this before. One of the things I hate more than anything is being pandered to in a way that makes me feel like the author is trying to purposefully manipulate me into feeling a certain thing.
Well,
and
they
like when
definitely
Brando
try to
goes
make you
home
feel sad.
and you're seeing all his children climbing all over him and his loving wife, I'm like, this dude is going to fucking die.
No, the worst
and
part of that for
immediately
me-
I stopped connecting with the character because there was no reason for me to get beyond that. And now I
See, that
I can't.
brings me back to something that I have accused you of before, which I think is very specific to you, which is that you are afraid to have your heart broken.
And that's-
you refuse
Oh,
to let
yeah.
yourself get emotionally invested in certain things because you are afraid
Well, you already
that
know
it will
that it's-
emotionally affect
That's-
you
and
in
I-
a negative way.
I think I don't. I mean, clearly, it depends entirely on the work, right? It's all about, and we come back to this time and time again, right? Like, I don't want to be given a fucking choice in that. If you're going to fucking rip my heart out of my chest, then you better be writing characters that make me want to fucking read, even though I know the end is coming and it's going to be a shit fest and it's going to make me want to die inside.
Well,
because I fucking read The Dark Tower, man, and the end of those books, I fucking wept openly. I fucking sobbed at certain parts of that book, and I couldn't stop, even though I knew that it was just going to get worse at the end.
The
I
end
could
of
not
The Dark
put it, I
Tower
could not
where
stop.
he says, and this is the end of our story, unless you want your heart broken. I'm like, okay, that's the end of the story. He gave me a choice to get out right there as the end,
Yes.
and I'm like, okay, I'm done. That's the end of The Dark Tower.
And that's I think that's the thing, is just like, it's not, and I don't necessarily think, I think it's a function of the pacing, and I also, you can't spend fucking like 100 pages making Brando this really, like, giving you the motivation.
But you can do that to Adam, which is something that I think he does like a little bait and switch on that for you, because if you know, oh, this is an Astro Boy story. Astro Boy can't die in an Astro Boy story.
I've never seen Astro Boy
Astro
or had
Boys-
any connection to this.
Yeah,
And so if you know that and you meet this little kid and you're like, oh, that's Adam, that's Astro Boy. Oh shit. Well, that's gonna be, the story's gonna be
that's
about
going to
him.
be problematic.
The story's gonna be about him from now on.
Yeah.
Like, we'll I'll get attached to that guy and his little sister who's awesome. And
Yeah.
just like love those characters, and then all of a sudden Adam fucking washes up on the shore and you're like, oh, well, okay, that did not go as well as I thought
But
it
like
would.
when and that's the
I
thing.
assumed that he was always going to come. Like, I was not worried that he was quote unquote
Well-
dead, because I assumed he was going to come back.
Yeah, but
I didn't.
you don't know.
I guess I don't know, but
Yeah.
I assumed and I was correct. So
I didn't know he was going to come back. That was just a shock to me.
Well, and he doesn't really come back as the same character.
Well,
either,
and
which
that's was my least favorite part.
Well, it
is I
reminds
kind of
me
felt
of-
like I was being like, it's like we can't. So, and that's why I qualified what I said by most of the like. I also have a big problem with Epsilon's death because I view it as being pointless. I look at that and I'm like, oh, of course Epsilon died because she had to die, right?
Yeah.
In order for the story, they refer to her as a she at one point.
They do in the first few times you meet her. It's not well translated.
It's the
Okay, so
it
that's-
seems like it was inconsistent. to me.
in the version that is in print from Viz
Is it a
Media,
he?
it's always a he
yes.
pronoun.
Okay.
Yeah.
However,
Well, that could-
they are robots,
Yeah.
so they don't really have gender. So you can refer
and that
either
could
way.
be
Yeah.
that could be due to the
the last
language
few
to
trades he's referred to
to
as
a
he.
he. But I mean,
and then when you
I
look
felt
closely, you're
that
like,
as-
oh, that is a male.
I was like, oh well, of course Epsilon fights Pluto and lives, and I'm like, that's fucking like I did not
Yeah.
expect that. That's cool, right? I
Yeah.
like that. And then he goes back and starts. They call it a series of bad decisions, right? Because the author has already decided that this character has to die, and so making that happen becomes paramount. And I think I just don't care. I'm like, that was pointless. It's like when Charlie died on Lost. Spoilers.
I'm never seen. I'm not gonna watch that show.
Right? It's like
Watch the first season.
It's
and
seriously
like, eh.
like it's the death of a major character, and literally the only reason he dies is because he dies in the script. There's like I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's seriously like 5 ways he could have gotten out of this situation.
Well, what I like about Epsilon's death is that he becomes Epsilon's a very selfless character.
Yes.
And the minute he becomes selfish is the minute he dies. Because he says, okay, I'm going to let you protect me. I'm going to leave my kids alone. Like, that seems super selfish.
I don't like that. And to contrast it, one of the things I love about the Game of Thrones series, and I'm not going to spoil any actual events.
Yeah.
If you know anything about Game of Thrones, you know that
Everybody you love will die.
Exactly, that a lot of characters die.
That happens.
And when a character dies in that series, it's because they were who they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first character, who I will not name, but the first major character who dies, has a number of opportunities to get
As
out
a
alive.
fatal case of being
It's stubbornness.
themselves.
Yeah.
Right, and they die because they are who they are. And if they were anybody else, they could have gotten out of it.
Yep.
Yes.
But they couldn't because they were who they were, and that
Yeah.
remains the case for every single character who gets killed in
And
that
I
series.
feel
agree.
like if
with the exception of like a few minor
if
characters.
Epsilon dies being a pacifist, like I understand what you're saying and I can appreciate it, but for me it would have been much more powerful if Epsilon had died just like in like a Gandhi type moment where like I'm not going to fight you.
Exactly.
That's because
Like-
that's not what I do.
I think that Epsilon's death would have been a lot more powerful if he had died because of who he was
Yeah.
and the
Well,
choices he
he
made.
did though, because he goes away from. I think that he goes away from his kids, and he's like, "Okay, I'll let you protect me." And then the bomb goes off and kills all of the general and all the general's men, which is a revenge.
So is that a
killing in
bomb or
way.
is that an attack from the? I didn't get that.
It was some attack
kind of weapon
happens,
attack,
and it
yeah.
blows up the mountain that their hideaway's on. And the only two people that survive are the RoboCop robot that's guarding him and
That guy was
Epsilon.
fucking awesome.
I love that guy. And they take off and they head back to the kids because they're like, "Oh shit, that's
Yeah.
who they're really.
Yeah,
That's who
yeah.
they're after." And is that the time where he lives, or
Yeah, no, he
Okay.
fights Pluto there and lives, and then
And
he
then
goes
he
to
lives.
get
But he goes to get
the kid that can't.
Yeah,
think,
that says Bora all the time.
Yeah.
So he goes there, is very selfless, but he's like, I'm going to protect that kid. I have to get him back. I have to go get that guy. And he gets there, and all he has the other detective or bodyguard who's with him
Mm-hmm.
go get the kid. And then he starts fighting Pluto so that they can get away. And the minute they can't get away, he like shoots his arms off to put a force field around them.
Yeah.
And then he dies because he can't fight back. And then that feels like very
It
Epsilon
just
to me.
But I feel like there was I just it didn't feel. I'm trying to think of another word because I don't want to say the word I'm thinking of. Like organic to me, it didn't. It felt forced to me. It felt.
I kind of have to agree with Joe.
I mean,
I probably didn't have as much of a negative reaction to it as he did, but
I wouldn't-
definitely feel like this story was constrained by the fact that it was based on another story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and these
that's
robots,
fair.
and I think that automatically places things. Now, I won't say I didn't have a super negative reaction for it because what the robot bodyguard does afterwards, I thought was incredibly cool.
Yeah, when he's like salutes and he's
I thought
like,
that was a really
you
good
are not
moment."
a coward for
Yeah.
for draft dodging, basically.
And that's kind of the thing. Is I think if you had told this story and had them kind of kept them more in the story until later and then had them taken out in very quick succession, you could have really hammered home your... Like, I just feel like anytime you write a story that's constrained within a larger story that has its own continuity, you're going to run into that problem because you have to abide by the rules of the larger
didn't
story.
really, though, because there's a lot of the characters in this story. I mean, I would say 90% of the characters in this story were never in the original story.
So then why didn't
he's-
he go all the way with it then? That's the thing.
Well, I mean, this was his tribute to Tezuka, and even on the covers it says Urasawa x Tezuka. Like, they
Right,
collaborated
right.
on this, so I think that there were some things that he didn't want. He didn't want to feel like he was overstepping his bounds, and also, I don't see it detrimental that we know that those characters are all going to die at the end. Because
I
I
think you
still
can figure out pretty quickly just based on the nature of the story that
They're all
all-
going to
yeah,
die. Yeah,
and I think that that's fine because knowing a character is going to die doesn't always take the weight of their death away. Like
That's
a
true.
Good, I think a good writer can make you care right up until the moment that they die and give you that kind of...
Well, a good writer is going to make you realize that they're going to die and like them anyway.
Yeah.
And then he's going to make you think for just like a fleeting second
That they're gonna live,
that
yeah.
they're going to make it through.
Yeah.
Which
And
happened to
then they
me
kill
in
them.
this story with Gesicht, at least.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's...
But I really didn't care about Epsilon. He was actually the one I liked the least out of the 7 robots. I
'Cause
really
he's a draft
felt.
dodger.
I really felt for Brando, though.
Goddamn communist.
I hated Mont Blanc. That guy was an asshole.
Yeah, the people's
Everybody
champion.
said he was so nice, but
I hated his mustache.
Mont Blanc.
Mont Blanc.
Mont
Yeah.
Blanc, White Mountain, White Peak.
Yeah, I love all the robots in this. The other thing that I think that is really funny is they all choose to take very different forms. Like, assumably they can switch bodies because Pluto takes over the body. What's his actual name? It's
Sahad.
Sahad takes over the body of that construction worker, like his off job body, and then he shows up in his big like digger robot and he's like, I've been looking for my body, that's it, give me
Yeah,
that back.
that was pretty cool.
I
And
love
then
that.
Brando like takes his head off. Maybe it's Hercules. Takes
No,
his head
it's
off.
No, it's
Brando.
Brando, the
Yeah.
head, the robot.
I mean,
takes
it's both
his
of
head
them
off
that
and
do
puts-
it.
Yeah,
But that
love
actually
that.
that brings up another point that I was
But
really
Mont Blanc
confused
runs
about.
around as that big fat guy with the mustache
Yeah,
all the
no,
time,
totally
and that made
does.
me love him
He's
so
a lumberjack
much.
robot.
Yeah, he could be, and
he's
he could choose
okay.
to be anything. And same with North number 2. Like they just kind of choose to be in those bodies.
But that
they're
actually
cool.
brings up another point that I was confused and angry about.
Okay.
So one of the things early on is a mysterious figure who goes and kills that professor with the horns. Mm-hmm. And it's
The
like
police robot sees him.
the police
jumping
robot
out
sees
of
him, and it's like his sensors identified it as
Human.
not a robot,
Yeah, well, yeah.
as human.
Right.
And it was confusing to me because I thought, okay, Pluto couldn't have done that because he's a big giant robot.
Right.
Yeah.
It must have been Dr. Abdullah.
Uh-huh. Abula, I think.
Abdullah, whatever
no,
his name
it's-
I don't
is.
think there's a D in there.
No, it's the guy that is essentially,
Pluto's other personality.
yeah. His name is
Abra.
Abra.
Yeah, there's a... We pulled
evolves
up a
into a
fan
cadabra.
translation online that uses different names.
We all read a different version of this, so
Yeah.
the names are
Okay.
going to be confusing.
Okay.
But in the translation of the printed one, it's a
Right.
Bula. I think.
Yeah, I'm going to admit I was really lazy. I was searching about the comic online, and I was like, oh, look, there's a fan translation from a few years ago. Well, I'll just read
that was
this.
how I originally read it because it hadn't been printed in
Right.
English yet.
And it,
so I was
and it
really
uses
excited.
some different names. Like
Yeah.
instead of Abula or whatever, it's Dr. Abra. And I think there's like a couple of other differences. So just
Yeah.
full disclosure. But in any case, like I was really confused about that. And then there was the whole thing where it's like, oh, he can project his mind electromagnetically and take over this robot that doesn't have a hard drive in it. And it seemed like a major revelation, but they never really talked about it any more than that.
No, that's true. That was something that I wanted to learn more about.
Like I feel like it was just kind of this
these robots
dangling
without
thing that
hard
was never
drive
gone
were being
into.
controlled.
Well,
How?
that,
And I'm like,
some- that
okay,
was-
so I guess
thought it was
Pluto
the-
took
I thought it
over
was
some...
always the cockroaches were like loading something into them. Like I didn't think he was like magically transmitting. I think it was. I thought it was implied that like because the cockroaches are always there. They're just like
and
in.
I took it that they were like robot.
They are
roaches.
robot cockroaches,
They're
and
cockrobots.
Like
And-
it's just there was like
Robo
three
roaches.
different
Robo
things
roaches.
that were just really vague and never explained. That
And
was
I
one
don't-
of them.
I
The
don't
serial
need-
killer robot was another, and the
I don't
fucking
need that.
the teddy bear robot.
Oh, that's my least favorite part of the whole
computer
story.
that controls like the
Yeah.
United States is basically it's their entire military.
yeah.
Where like it just kind of shows up and it's this evil teddy bear and it's not explained at all.
What I really don't like about that is the word balloons come from the teddy bear.
Right.
But the AI is that giant fucking computer behind them.
Yeah.
Like, why doesn't that just have a screen on it? Like, I feel like the teddy bear is just this weird pandery thing that's like,
Yes.
look at the creepy teddy bear. And I'm like, I don't care. Like,
I
I'm
agree.
much more interested in the fact that it's like a giant AI military robot.
Well,
like,
it's
that
just
is
like-
so much
That is
cooler to me.
100% evil.
Then
Yeah.
it's like I am going to kill all of humanity. 10% will remain, and I'll give that to you, the president, if you just shut the fuck up and let me blow up the world, basically. And I was like, that's cold.
Thanks,
that's
Obama.
cool because I love
well, I'm
fucking
pretty sure that
villains.
president is supposed to be George Bush.
It's Alexander, is what they call him in the translation.
Yeah, but
he's supposed to be a nobody
he
president.
kind of looks like George Bush
I
a little
guess.
bit. And
I
this was
thought he
written-
looked more
he's
like Reagan.
blonde
This is
in-
put out when
in the color-
Bush was in the presidency.
In the color pages, I think he's blonde. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this book is a reaction to what happened in the early 2000s.
Right,
With
no,
American
obviously.
foreign policy. Because the United States of Thracia have this information that there's a robot army in Persia, and they go to Persia, and there's no army, and they're like, where are all your weapons of mass destruction? They're not there. And they're like,
they're
well,
bombing
we
children
had
and-
like, it's very clearly a reaction to
Obviously,
U.S.'s forest
yeah.
policy in Iraq. And
Warning, political commentary.
I don't want to get too much into that. But
No.
Well,
what
I don't think we need
wanted
to talk about
about
that.
Because
I
it's-
think that the allegory is obvious.
yeah.
very obvious.
Exactly.
But what I think is interesting is I love villains who are villainous with a purpose.
Yes.
Like, I mean, the Joker is very much the quintessential villain without a purpose. Like, he just does it, to see crazy shit happen because he is a very chaotic evil. But what I really like is when a villain is like, no, I have a plan. I'm going to carry it out. I don't care who gets in my fucking way. I'm never going to stop. The only way you can stop me is by destroying
exactly.
me. And I love that. And I think that this villain, the AI robot thing, is the coolest part of this story, and in like 4 panels. Yeah. Like, is not a heavily and doesn't really show up until that last trade.
Yeah,
because the whole time you're like,
I found it incredibly frustrating because it's like,
yeah,
oh, here's the secret villain that nobody knows about, and like it's the end of the story, and he's still out there. And then serial killer robot shows up. Yeah. And it's like, spear to the face.
Blue.
Oh, so fucking unsatisfying.
Incredibly
I'm like,
unsatisfying.
Did you just really do that? Did you really just do that? It's almost like he wrote the rest of the story and he was like, oh yeah, I've got to kill the psycho teddy bear.
It reminds me of the ending of Silence of the Lambs.
But like now I will say this. Adam does go to see whatever his name is. Brow 15, blah, blah, blah. And say, I need you to do something for me. Mm-hmm. The thing is, though, is that makes the confrontation
I first got the feeling when he traded hard drives with Gesicht, or memory chips, I got the feeling that after that, Brown knew what he had to do and like how this was going to end.
And that's kind of like,
how did he know that? Gesicht didn't know anything about that.
While I can appreciate Brow as this kind of Hannibal Lecter type creature, like it doesn't. He's portrayed as kind of being. It's like in at least in the version I read. He is portrayed at a certain point as being as sophisticated in AI as the most top level. And it's like, when does that ever come up? Like, it doesn't, he's clearly of an older model. And he's like a much older model.
I got the feeling that he could leave anytime he wanted.
He says specifically that he can't, though. He says that even if I wasn't stuck here, I would not be able to leave. And that's kind of like, that's why, like,
but
later...
is that something that he was, like, programmed to say? Because I kind of got the feeling the reason that he killed the guy in the first place was because the teddy bear was programming him.
I don't ever see a connection between those two things.
Yeah.
And that's why he knew about the teddy bear and had to go kill him.
See, there's never, like... There is never a connection made to that.
He's not nearly as well-rounded as Hannibal Lecter
because we're given no background on him other than he was the first robot to kill a person.
Right.
And it's said throughout the thing that robots can't lie. The only robot that can lie is Abra or Abula.
And that's why he must have been programmed to do it.
But and this is the thing.
I think that plays a little bit into the point that I think that Urasawa is making throughout this book is that robots can become human through extreme emotions.
Oh, yeah.
And it's when they feel the most extreme emotions that they become fully human.
Yeah.
And I think that Brow plays into that. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he hated like so much, he was able to transcend his programming. Mm-hmm.
Which I'll give you that, but like my whole thing is that I see nothing in the text to back up that he was programmed by the teddy bear or by Abra.
No, I mean it's something that I just felt when I was reading.
Yeah, and I, like that's good, but like I need more than that. Like I agree with you. I think the whole basis of this is that there's this connection between humanity and emotion, and that's kind of the thing. I'm surprised I actually ended up liking this book as much as I did because the whole, like, what is the difference between artificial intelligence and humanity and what is the soul and blah, blah, blah. Like, they would get into that on TNG and those were kind of not my favorite episodes. And, like, it's just not an interesting topic to me because it is an inherently philosophical one, and I just get bored with those after like 5 minutes.
It's theory of robotics instead of the law of robotics.
But my whole thing is just that while I can appreciate there being like plot lines that exist just to be plot lines, I think I have a problem with it when they're woven into the main storyline and then there's no place for me to go. Like, And that's like, I want to understand. Like, I want to be able to read Pluto and kind of make connections that I didn't before. But I'm almost positive that in a certain areas that there's just not. There's not going to be.
And I guess that's one of the reasons I liked it is because, like, okay, so I do have a problem with some of the storylines not finishing. But, like, if you ask yourself, well, how did Brow know about the teddy bear? And then you start to think about the explanations that could be, and the one that makes the most sense to me is just that, well, that means he must have had some past dealings with him if he knew that the teddy bear existed.
Except that Brow killed people before that computer was a thing. That computer was built.
I feel like it's just a plot hole.
Yeah, no, and that's like the thing is like
plot hole, it's just
that
like
supercomputer was built for
unnecessary.
Thracia right before or during the war. And
But how long did the war go for? We don't actually know.
yeah, but it's
No, it was not long.
no, it wasn't long. It was quite short and intense. And Brow has been in that building for quite some time. It's just
I don't find that Brow's story has any holes in it or is weird at all. Like, I think that Brow's story is fine.
Brow's story is fine
until he escapes.
Yes,
Right, yes.
Like,
yes.
I
the
agree.
minute he escapes, I'm like, wait, how? What? Like, where does that come
I
from?
like the idea of him being this
And-
kind of like, he's got information,
Mm-hmm.
but it comes not from. He's not the guy that's like, go back and look under the stone and you'll find this thing.
Yeah.
He's got information in that he sees the world in the most unique way possible because he has killed before,
Yeah.
and he understands what's associated with that. And that's when I think,
Well, that's why Gesicht goes to him. 'Cause
Yeah.
He's like, whoa, there's a robot killing humans. That's only happened one time before.
So-
We'll go to this guy. Like, that seems super logical.
yeah,
very
absolutely.
robotic to
But
me.
when he escaped, like Adam
Right.
going to see him at the end and he
I
escapes, I'm
don't-
just kind of, it feels not,
I
it
don't
doesn't
need
jive.
that. I mean, like, I think it's more interesting in the story if you leave the teddy bear supercomputer alone.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
like,
I think,
guess
yeah.
what? Pluto destroyed Bora, and that ended that conflict. But the conflict between these nations and between robots and humanity and all that just keeps going.
Yeah.
I think
agree.
that's more I don't think you needed to wrap that story
I
up.
totally agree.
And
Yeah,
so,
I would have been okay if it hadn't been.
I think it's weird that I think he felt the need to wrap that up and did not
guess
come
to
up with an
me-
elegant solution to do it.
Yeah,
I
I guess
agree.
And
to
I
me
wish he
it's
wouldn't have
just
felt
that
the
if I
need to.
start thinking about things, my mind goes to different places, and so I got the feeling that
Well, I mean, you could imply that he was let out. That
Well, and we
somebody,
talk
like,
about
wanted
this
him to be
Just,
like
we
this.
just talked about this. You infer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing is like there are definitely things, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but the ends of both Samurai Champloo and Cowboy Bebop, which are two of my favorite animes ever, both have highly ambiguous endings. And you can choose. Shinichiro Watanabe has come out and said specifically the reason they're highly ambiguous is because he wants you to make up your own damn mind about
Fucking
it.
hate that.
And
I love that.
really like
love
that,
it.
but only because in those two instances, I can see why that would, because you come in after, like you come into Cowboy Bebop, these guys have already been doing their thing, and you leave, and they're going to continue to do their thing, right? Like you come into Samurai Champloo, and these guys have been doing their thing, and you're just seeing a chapter. And I like to think that there are other chapters that haven't included us, right? This is
Yeah.
just one chapter of the story, and afterwards,
Well,
such and such is
that's
going to
why
happen.
they called the original Star Wars Episode 4.
Yeah,
Because they,
it gave you
no,
this feeling that.
Originally, it was just Star Wars, and it was only in the lead up to The Empire Strikes Back that they went back and put the Episode 4 title on.
Yeah,
Right, but they still wanted to imply that you were joining this story mid-story.
In progress.
Because they
Right.
weren't going to call it Chapter
Which
That's
1.
why, that's why they called it Chapter 5, The Empire Strikes Back, instead of Chapter 2.
Right.
And that's I think when that's done well, I think that's a great storytelling device because it makes you feel like there's more going on.
Here's the thing. Like, I am 100% fine with open-ended endings, where it's like, not everything has been resolved. There are still some things that are ongoing. Like, this is one story in a grander pageant of things that are happening.
Yeah.
That I'm fine with.
I think that's most stories.
Stories where it ends on an indefinite note, and it's like you kind of have to read into things and infer a little bit, and then you can go, okay, I see what happened. Endings where it's like, this thing happened, and that's kind of anomalous, And you could read it one way or you could read it another way. And there's really no way to tell what the actual ending is. That bugs the shit out of me. The ending of Inception made me just go apoplectic with rage. I hated it so much.
There's
because it
another P
completely
in there.
undermines...
It's apoplectic.
Apoplectic. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Apoplectic. A-P-O.
I can relate to that feeling, so I want you to have the proper word.
Apoplectic with rage.
Yes.
Because the ending basically goes, all of the events of this movie are now in doubt, and there is 100% no way for you to come to any sort of concrete conclusion.
Well,
as to
there's
what the
another
movie
But
actually
I
that
like
does
it because
that.
it forces you to back up your beliefs on it.
Yeah, but there's no way for me to be any more right than you.
And does that bother you?
Yes.
It's coming from a guy that that would not leave this solipsistic conversation we were having the other day alone because for whatever fucking reason, it was a conversation that I literally lost interest in 5 minutes after we started having it, and yet he would not leave it alone.
What was it?
It was about the nature of the universe and determinism.
Oh my God,
I
yes.
don't care. I don't care.
And
I
it's
already
like,
don't care.
It's just like, you know what?
I love when I post a retort to a conversation onto Facebook when the conversation happened like 3 weeks earlier. Or a month. Like, we had this argument like a month or more
It's
ago,
like,
and yesterday I
and
posted
this.
a response on Facebook like, and one more thing.
I wanted to say that there's another movie that does that, but people forget that that's what happens at the end of the movie. I guess spoilers for The Usual Suspects, but at the end of that movie, you leave going, I don't know what was real.
Well,
Like,
and
almost
That's the
none of that.
unreliable narrator.
Well, sort of.
But you get the sense that there were specific concrete events because you know
Sort of.
that person is who they are.
well,
But you know
there-
that
I
some
mean,
stuff blew up and some people are dead, but you don't know why any of that happened.
well, look at the end of
reasons
American
he gave
Psycho.
you-
Is another great.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
it's
exactly.
like what in
Like-
that movie is real and what isn't.
Wait, what movie?
American Psycho.
Didn't see it.
Oh man,
a
I was just watching that with
Fan
Kirby,
fucking tastic film.
like 2 days ago.
Yeah, fan fucking
so
tastic
good.
film. And people are still
that movie's principally about business cards, right?
Yes,
yes.
The best scene in that whole
Is-
movie
is the business
about
card
business
scene.
cards and Huey Lewis in the news.
The thing-
That's all you need to know about that movie.
People are still writing papers, academic papers on Sam Spade's motivation at the end of the Maltese Falcon.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like that's I love that shit. I love getting into those discussions. As
I
long as
think
they don't
that-
last too long.
Well, I think that's what's
Well, I think there's a difference between talking about like, oh, well, what was this character's motivation versus like, what the fuck happened in that entire movie? I have no idea, and neither do you.
But then again, I have always said it's not about the end. It's about like
The journey
It's
to
not
the
about
end.
the journey. It's just about like the experiences that you had throughout the film. Like you watching the film, and I often talk to old comic book fans about this idea too, because they're like, "Oh, it's retconned. The shit doesn't matter anymore." I'm like, "It does matter
No, it
because
does, totally
you
does,
read it
yeah.
and you felt something when you read it."
Absolutely.
Because DC or Marvel didn't bust into your house and burn up those old issues in which that happened, as much as they might wish they could do that.
I swear to
Yes,
God,
but
Dan
it
DiDio
can-
has a filing cabinet in his office with that plan. In it.
I know, I'm sure he does.
Undone. No, he's
Well,
got a stack. Him and Jeff
I'm
Johns
sure
have a stack
there are
of
more-
issues on his desk, and they're as they destroy the DC universe, they're just looking at it and going, "Well, fuck that story over. What are we doing next?"
I
But
think that
sometimes they
really the
construe
X-Men writers,
something-
though, are really the ones that wish they could
See,
do that. 'Cause
here's the thing:
so
is that
confusing.
Fahrenheit 451 is actually about DC Comics.
I think that more so X-Men writers would want to do that. But anyway, I think that what matters is that how you felt when you read it. Like it doesn't.
You like that one, Joe?
That was good. I like that a
Yes,
lot.
it does matter how you felt when you read it, but also
The ending is irrelevant.
when
No, the ending isn't irrelevant.
When
the ending isn't
sometimes-
the entire thing.
It's
but it
irrelevant.
is a significant portion of it.
I think it
sometimes
can color
things happen
what
and
came
you
before
can't take them back, and it makes you. It basically ends the thing for you.
And I will say that I think an ending can ruin a book for me.
You know what my
Why the Last Man? Worst fucking ending I've ever read, and
Sure.
it ruined
You're
that whole book
on
for me.
here- Cocaine.
here's my perfect example of what I like, and I think Joe will back me up on this because he just watched it. The Ninth Gate.
I love
That's
that movie.
I love
The
that
end
movie.
of that movie is ambiguous, but if you follow the clues and if you think hard about what happened, you can come to certain conclusions about what was going on.
I
This
watched
is going to
this
be
movie.
an example of how we are very much our opinion to the T, because you gave the example of the Ninth Gate. The first 3 times I watched that film, I watched it on television and did not see the end of the movie. I got to the part where they get to the Dumas Society or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the end of the movie. I didn't see the end.
Oh,
that
shit.
was one of my favorite films. I had seen 3/4 of it 3 times.
Oh, my God, that's
before I finally
hilarious.
rented it from Netflix and watched the whole thing and was like, that's a really different ending than I thought was going to happen. But that's different. Like, that's we very much are our opinions. I didn't care that I hadn't seen the end. I still enjoyed the shit out of that movie.
I was watching it the other day, and I'm talking to Toby because Johnny Depp plays a rare book, like finder, dealer,
He's like a hunter of rare books.
And
He's like the Boba
he
Fett of
smokes
books.
like a fucking chimney, and not just him, but most of the people in the movie, and they're
Yeah.
dealing with these old books that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're getting ash on it. Well, the one the main one is worth $1 million. That's what his buddy says. He's smoking, he's drinking, he's not keeping it in a bag, he's just keeping it in his like wrapped in cloth in his bag. I'm like, this is completely unrealistic. But then I realized the everybody smoking thing is actually important to the plot. I had a revelation about that.
The weird thing for me, and I actually feel bad about this to the day, is Ultimate Spider-Man used to be one of my favorite books. I mean, so much so, in fact, that when I owed Joe a 6-pack of beer, I instead gave him the first hardcover for Ultimate Spider-Man. And I feel bad about that because the ending of the book made us both hate that book.
And I want to tell you
I
the
didn't.
exact words I told Joe
Because
the
the
other day.
right ending to that book makes that book a lot better, and that's what I pretend happened. Is that it ends with
that's
Cataclysm or whatever that's fucking
Ultimatum.
called, Ultimatum, and that's it.
Yeah, Cataclysm is going on right now.
That's Batman.
And specifically,
There's a
it
Batman
ends with
Cataclysm.
Okay, there's an ultimate cataclysm that's
Yeah.
happening right now.
specifically it ends in just Spider-Man like crossover with
not-
Ultimatum,
not
because
in-
Ultimatum itself is also shit on a piece of toast that's also made out of shit, and it's covered in a gravy that's made out of shit.
I told Joe this the other day. These were my exact words. I love that series, but I can't read 3/4 of it.
Yeah,
And
it's
you
'cause-
said, I think that
Means you just like parts of it.
that's the correct way to say that.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I think I love that series. I just don't like 3/4
And
of
that's
it.
that's the way I
That's
feel
how we're
about Why the Last Man, which we will most likely talk about on a long run one day.
Absolutely.
In 4 years.
The story is good, but the ending just fucking kills it for
And
me. And so you can't read that story without reading the ending.
And I don't care.
That's fine. Then that's
Yeah,
cool.
and
Like,
so that's-
I'm you're a
willing to-
bad person for reasons other than that.
Sure.
Yeah, and see, I think that's a story where I like it enough that I'm willing to overlook the fact that it has a bad ending, just because a lot of things don't have great endings, and that's just something you have to learn to live with.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
that-
no, that's.
Pluto
I
did
think.
not have a great
Nope.
ending.
I think
and I
you're
still like
absolutely
about
right.
65% of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
I love
I
Pluto,
agree with you.
But the ending is not my favorite part, but
There are definitely, I think,
still like
things that
reading
you
it.
can stop and just kind of walk away from, and just pretend that it ended there.
I like reading it because it has great moments in it.
Yeah, I felt that.
Scrubs season 8, right? I don't acknowledge Scrubs season 9. To me, Scrubs ended at the end of season 8.
Actually, when I was a kid, my mom used to read to me every night, and we she read like 14 of the Oz books to me, and like all the Lord of the Rings, and I think 6 out of 7 of the Narnia books, because she always said the last book is incredibly depressing, and I'm not going to read it to you. And so I don't know anything about the last battle.
The final battle or the last battle. Some book collections put that as the first book now.
Weird.
Yeah, because it's an ambiguous book order, and the final battle they never. This may be way wrong, but this is my understanding of how that book works. Is they never
Spoilers for Narnia, I guess.
they never say Narnia in that book.
Huh.
So the kingdom that they're fighting over could be an alternate kingdom pre-Narnia.
Except aren't the 4 Pevensey children, or 3 of the 4 Pevensey children in it?
I don't remember that.
I don't
Because
fucking.
there's a whole thing that like Susan isn't there because she's a slut or something, and so she doesn't get to go to super heaven.
I thought that was in The Magician's Nephew.
No, I'm
Which
pretty
is
sure that's
another
the
one
last
that
battle.
sometimes they'll put first.
Yeah.
The Magician's Nephew.
Yeah,
It was
there's The Magician's
actually
Nephew and
the
The Horse and His
first
Boy.
chronicle. Or
Are prequels.
Magician's Nephew, even though it was written after, it was
It's a prequel.
it was his official first book for the story chronologically.
And I say you don't get to fucking do that. They come out in the order you get them, and if you don't write the first one first, then you're screwed. Sorry, C.S. Lewis. That's who wrote them, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And also, it's an analogy for Christianity, so who cares? You'd be much better off reading the
Actually,
Pullman books.
my friend Ben cares a lot.
Oh, well, I apologize, Ben, if you're listening.
I hope that he is listening, but I don't think that just because something is a Jesus analogy, it's
No,
necessarily bad.
no.
We were just
Superman.
talking about Adam Warlock on the way over here,
yeah, and Superman
how
and
his
All-Star
like
Superman.
first big story arc is a Jesus analogy, and I like that character a lot.
Yeah, no, I was just...
But as far as ambiguous book orders go, like I think that that's actually something cool, and I would love to see a
Yes.
story which is specifically written so that you can read it in
Any order.
multiple,
that would
like
be
two
very
different
cool.
orders. Like
Yeah.
I've had this idea in my head
The
for a
Redwall
while
books.
for a time travel book that has two main characters, and every chapter has two numbers on it. One for one
Actually-
character and one for the other character, and you can read the book in either order.
When
I
I
like
got the Memento DVD, I went through on my DVD player and spent like an hour programming it so that it would play the last chapter first, so it would play in order, pretty
That's
much.
an Easter egg on the bonus feed on the deluxe edition. You can watch it in order.
In order, and it was interesting.
that movie
terrible.
sounds like it'd be
And I-
shit in the
It is.
right order.
It is
And
actually
if
shit.
you've never
not,
seen
yeah.
Memento, I think that actually is a movie that it's never as good the second time you watch it. Like
No.
there is something
Yeah.
special there when you watch it the first time, not
I
being
kind
spoiled
of
on the plot anymore. Like you
disagree.
can be spoiled on the premise because obviously you know what the premise is in the
Right.
first few minutes, but not knowing the ending, I think, is better.
Oh yeah.
Well,
See,
yeah.
I kind of disagree because it's one of my favorite movies and I've watched it many, many times, and each time I'm actually picking up more and more
and I would agree
of,
with that.
more and more of the intricate details that actually went into making it.
I think it's similar to movies.
Okay, let me revise my statement. It's not that it's not as good the second time; it's that you can never have the same experience.
Experience
That
twice.
is
No,
true.
absolutely.
I think
I
that's-
agree.
because
with
there
that.
is a
Any
major
book,
revelation at the very
It's
end
like
of the
the
movie.
crying
that
game
colors.
And that's why I've
or
never
Usual
actually seen
Suspects.
Inception twice, even though people tell me I should go watch it again because I'll pick up more.
Please don't.
You know, it's like
worse the second
Inception is
I
not going
find
to
that
have.
hard to believe.
Every crack that you didn't see the first time in that film is glaring the second time you see it. And I'm not talking about plot holes. I'm talking about the fact that all of the dialogue in that movie is, hey, here's what we're doing right now. Do you know what we're doing right now? Yeah, I'm on track with what I'm doing right now. Oh, that's great. I'll continue to keep doing what I'm doing. Good. As long as I'm continuing to do what I'm doing and you're continuing to do what you're doing, then we'll all be doing the same thing. That's good. I'm very glad that we're still doing these things.
Sure,
Like,
can
that
you narrate
whole
movies for
movie
me?
Is that? And I'm like, wow, I know what
You
you guys
should
are
narrate
doing.
movies
Oh.
for blind people.
It would be awful. Okay, now there's a guy. He looks sort of like that other guy that was early. I forgot his name though, and then he's got a blue shirt on. That's not important. I just wanted to tell you that.
Also,
What's
he's
blue.
Yeah.
He's got a shirt. He's pretty good looking. I mean, I know that you have no concept for that unless you're one of those blind people that became blind after they could see initially.
Yeah, that could happen.
You know, just think about something you would find attractive and then make that his face. You know, it's
Like
cool.
an apple
It's
or a
like an apple.
lunchbox.
Imagine he feels very soft.
They
Yeah.
actually do make
Imagine his
audio
face looks
captions
like
for blind people.
Really?
For television.
Oh man!
It's an
Yeah,
actual.
Please
it's-
never let me do any of those. Is
But
what we've learned here.
anyways,
Do we have anything else to say about Pluto?
I wanted to talk about how that even though I know the ending of this book and even though I've read it before, this is my second reading. You guys, this is all your first readings of this. I still think that there are moments that grab me and just are good moments in this book, and I think that that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying like, oh, it's not the ending, it's the journey, because the scene at the beginning where he has to tell Robbie's wife that Robbie died, like that whole scene, I think is amazing. Like the book could have ended there, and I'd be like, "Wow, that was a really good.
that was really
story."
good. Yeah.
Well, the
Like-
artwork is beautiful in this comic.
Oh, I love
and
it.
really sets the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you can really feel kind of like the ever-present sense of dread that permeates this story in the artwork.
Well,
because of the way that it's paced and like the static panels focusing on background elements.
We very rarely read books that are written and illustrated by the same person on the show.
Yeah.
Because Western comics doesn't really work like that. But this is manga, and that's very much more often the case. And so I think that plays so well into the emotion, that you can get emotion from the art as much as you get it from the dialogue.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to communicate that emotion between two people. It's like, okay, I want this scene to have a lot of impact, so, you know, when you're drawing it, make sure it has emotional impact. And they're like, I don't, you know, like, how do you communicate that unless you're like, okay, panel 5, shot of Robbie's wife's face. Panel 6, same shot of Robbie's wife's face. Panel 7, like, you know, you have to write all that out and describe
draw
all
it exactly the same, but sadder.
And then, draw the robot sadder this time. And then...
But not too sad. Like, they didn't have your favorite thing for dinner at the diner you went to sad, and now she's lost her puppy sad, and now she's like the person you love is dead sad.
Yeah.
But do not change any element of her face at all.
Right. Yeah. And I think with the exception of probably Alan Moore, there's not... Writers often don't send enough information to artists, and Alan Moore probably sends too much. So, like, some kind of happy medium. If you've ever
this tree needs to have 23,678 leaves on it.
If you've ever seen any of Alan Moore's script pages, like, they're like novels in and of themselves.
Well, but it's a comic, like the finished page is a novel in of itself because he put 7 pages of text in the back of his comic.
Well, also he binds all his scripts together in the Alan Mooreomicon.
Yeah.
It's the Moorenomicon is what it's called, and it's a magical tome that contains the secrets of the Mourniverse.
Nice. I think that it's really difficult to get that kind of dialogue between the artist author to be as strong as it is between someone who is like equally great writer as they are an artist.
Well, yeah,
and that's why you should read Barry Ween.
When you cut out the middleman,
he's a brilliant writer, but his art is also fucking phenomenal.
It really is.
It's gorgeous, and the time that he spends pacing wise to give himself the time to draw really beautiful shit is just great.
It's kind of amazing to me because he took all these character designs from Astro Boy.
Yeah,
almost fucked up. I didn't do it. From Astro Boy,
that Atomic Robo Boy,
fairly ridiculous.
Oh yeah,
and makes them work.
Yeah,
somehow.
I think Pluto looks cool. I was worried.
Pluto was my
time.
least favorite design,
but I was worried the whole time that it would be like a monster movie where it's like, oh, the monster's really creepy, and then the minute you see him, you're like, well, that's a joke, and it didn't happen as much.
It felt kind of silly to me, honestly.
The horns.
I like 90% of the character designs. I even like Dr. Tenma, even though throughout the entire comic he was doing the chin down, eyes up thing, which fucking annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah. Because he's looking smarmy over the top of his glasses.
Yeah, I really wanted throughout the entire thing somebody to just come up and break his glasses. Because he fucking deserves it.
That's not even Batman will hit somebody wearing glasses. You're so violent.
That's why you take the glasses off his face, you break them, you put them on the floor, and you stomp on them, and then you hit him.
Why? I mean, he's clearly a man in great pain. Like, I don't understand why you're so violent all the time.
He is a bad person.
Also, he's kind of the cause of all of.
No, he totally is, and I understand.
He's not the cause of everything bad.
It wasn't the whole chin down, eyes up thing that made me want to hit him in the face. It's all like, you don't know. I'm going to give you. You've asked me a completely honest and understandable question, but I will answer you in the most cryptic possible way.
I'm Riddle Man.
I am a man so swathed in his own self-importance and sorrow that I can't even answer a question directly. It's like, no, whatever, dude.
Well, like, I don't know a lot about
honestly,
Astro Boy.
Like, if he were a character in a Western comic book, he would be a supervillain.
Well, I don't know a lot about Astro Boy, but I'm pretty sure that Tenma, the original creator of Astro Boy, goes on to like be more villainous.
I mean, he's basically like, I'm kind of doing my thing, and if I kill 1 million people by accident while I'm doing that, well, that's really just too bad.
Yeah,
I do not give.
Well, but I think they do an interesting thing at the end where he's like, how do you know when a scientist has gone too far? or do we go too far? He says something along those lines. And I was like,
Yes.
oh, okay, well, there's acknowledgement of the fact that he's actually, like, been playing God. Maybe that wasn't the best thing to do. But
he doesn't ever really seem like he regrets it.
No, he doesn't seem regretful.
I like him. I like him as a character because he's not really good and he's not really evil. He's just kind of making decisions, and maybe you agree with the decisions he makes and maybe you don't. And that changes from page to page, panel to panel for me. It's like, I like it when he brings Astro Boy back. I'm like, yay, you fixed Astro Boy. I'm so happy. And then, like, the next panel when he's, like, being a douche and tells you that he's the reason that the world's going to blow up, you're like, okay, I don't like you as much
It's
anymore.
like, you're...
And I find that I like him because I feel like he's an interesting character. He's complicated and, like,
Well, it's fair.
Yeah, I mean,
different.
I can be emotionally affected by him in a way where he is a good character, but I still want to punch him in the face.
Oh, yeah.
Word up.
But I think that's
Word
an interesting character. I think that there's...
I mostly just hated the chin down, eyes up thing.
Yeah.
No,
That's
fair.
Because he does it in every single panel.
Yeah. Well,
Now I'm just picturing an entire, like, what is, like, 1,400 pages of him just, like, every panel is him, chin down, eyes up.
just staring at you.
Like, 9 panels to a page.
Yep.
Yeah.
1,400 pages.
That's what it felt like.
I don't know. I just like the amount of, like, kind of gray characters in this story.
Yeah.
It's very much not like Western comics.
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm perfectly happy for there to be gray characters where you are honestly, like, you don't know if they're good or bad.
Well, and then, like, what really, makes a character good or bad
Exactly.
is through their actions. And sometimes you make good actions for the wrong reasons, and sometimes you make wrong actions for the right reasons. And, like, I think that's all kind of mixed into that good, bad paradigm. And I think that in manga, especially, like, they're more willing to examine some of those, like, some of how actions can make you villainous versus just like your intentions make you villainous.
Well, and they're
opposed
much
to
bigger
Western.
into the ambiguity. It's much less
Western
clear-cut.
comics are very much like, this is a bad guy, this is a good guy, they punch each other now. And especially superhero comics.
Yeah.
Absolutely superhero comics.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
even in a lot of Western media, it's like a gray character, very rarely is the villain of the story because they want to give you someone to actually hate.
Yeah.
They don't like to humanize villains in a lot of Western media, so I don't know, I find it interesting. I think everyone should read at least one manga just to feel like how different it is from Western comics.
And that manga is Naruto.
Well,
Yeah,
everybody should
obviously
read 2
Naruto.
manga. 1 manga and Azumanga Daioh.
Well, yeah.
Because Azumanga Daioh is amazing.
I just think, just pick one. I mean, there's literally manga for everyone.
Don't just pick
There
one,
are
'cause
a
some of
ton
them are
great manga, whatever the plural of manga is.
Manga.
Yeah. But I'm actually going to recommend another manga at the end of the episode.
Oh, shit.
I'm not as my pick, but just
Yeah.
as a recommendation.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, I think I actually was kind of stymied. Are we done with Pluto? Can we talk about
I feel like
recommends?
I've said everything I really have to say.
I don't
about it.
really-
it's
I mean,
it's a good story.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to like about it. I definitely had problems with it,
Yeah.
but go ahead and read it. Like,
Yeah,
I
I-
normally don't like detective fiction, and I really like the detective fiction aspects of the story.
Cool.
I thought this was a phenomenal book, and I did want to mention the character Urine, Adam's
Sister?
sister.
Yeah,
I loved her.
Yeah.
Thought that was awesome.
I
She's
felt
great.
I
love it
liked
when-
her. I wish that she had been a little less aimless.
Yeah, she doesn't really serve a huge
That was
purpose in
kind
the
of her
story.
charm to me.
Well, she's also not one of the strongest robots. She's
No,
just, like,
she's
is
not.
a robot.
Which
in the
actually
world.
led me to breathe, because I was actually a lot more attached to her than I was to Adam.
Yeah.
I was like, she's pretty cool.
She's
Like,
very
just
cool.
Like, oh, you're sad, kitty. Oh, you're sad, suicidal boy. Here, now you're together. Be sad together. Or happy, whatever. It's cool. Hey, you're sad too, robot man. Let's go.
Well, she was built by a totally different
Yeah, she was
creator
bit by,
than...
I can't remember his
The
name.
doctor, really long name.
Oshina Maga, something like that. Ochina.
Oshinomazu?
Yeah, maybe it's Ochinamazu.
Yeah, he took over the head of the robotics industry
After
in Japan
Tenma left.
after Tenma left,
Yeah.
and so he created her. And it's just like, I've always liked in Mega Man how different Dr. Light and Dr. Wily are, and in some retellings of that, how they like start to blur the lines between like which one was like really evil and which one's really good,
Right.
and who made which robots. Because in some tellings, like And spoilers for Mega Man X4. I think that Zero was made by a bad guy, but
I
they
have no
play
idea.
it
100%
off.
was.
What?
I can't.
No, he definitely was.
Yeah, but
He
they
was designed by Dr. Wily.
no,
I-
it's Sigma.
No. Zero was designed by Dr. Wily, and Sigma, the robot hunter, opened up Zero's capsule and was infected by the makes robots evil virus that Dr. Wily inserted into Zero to be used against Mega Man.
Okay, so
All I know is that Samus is 6'3" and 200 pounds, which I
in
just found
her
out.
armor,
No, outside of her armor.
That's a lot of woman.
she's
That is a whole lot of fucking women.
yeah.
Right on. Anyways,
Are we ready to move on?
Very tall.
she is very tall. I'm down. I'm totally down with it. Anyways, I'm totally down with a fictional character that doesn't affect my existence on this planet one way or another being tall. Anyways, recommendation. It took me a while to figure out what I was going to recommend.
Well, why,
Yeah,
don't
me
you tell,
too.
why don't you tell us, if you liked Pluto, what else should you read, Jim?
I think you should check out Powers, actually, which I think is a similar situation, except instead of robots, it's about
Superheroes.
It's about powers. It's about a cop and his partner that investigate superpowered crime,
That's a good call.
and it's really. I think it's for the first 7 trades, anyways. It's a really good. After that, I think it went to Marvel's Icon imprint, and
Yeah.
it just kind of jumped the shark. But it's Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Avon Oeming.
Yep.
The art is great. It's
Yep.
very cartoony. The colors are really great, and the stories are really cool because it kind of examines them. It's meta commentary at the same time as it's kind of examining the place of police in a world where there are superheroes that deal with crime. And it deals with a lot of different issues. And I think the first 7 trades are all. The 7 is weird, but 1 through 6 are, I think, fantastic. And it's kind of a similar vibe to it, where what you're getting is Pilgrim and Christian Powers, who are the 2 main characters. So it just struck me as there was kind of being a parallel there in that. Read and you'll figure out the exact parallel, but I'm not going to spoil that since that
It's
wasn't
a
our book. But
very
it's
good
good
book, and it's been recommended on this show
We recommended
5 times
we
now.
recommended who killed Retro Girl
Yeah.
That's the first
before.
one.
Yeah, that's the first trade, the
it
first
was
collection.
me. I killed Retro Girl. I'm sorry. I didn't mean
You're
to
a
do it.
bastard. She was a light of this city. Jesus
The
Christ.
city's champion,
I cannot fucking take you anywhere.
hero of the people.
Hero of the
Yeah,
La
but
Raza.
Powers, good book. Go read it.
Yeah.
Powers is good, and that's my thing. And also, as always, you should go if you like manga at all and you haven't read Azumanga Daioh, you should, because it will make your life better.
I love how
It
you
is good.
snuck that in there.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
I'm also going to recommend 2 books because I'm a cheater. But first, can we just talk about how cool it is when Adam just decides to like show that he can fly through the air and it just,
that's
like,
cool, yeah.
rockets off the sidewalk?
That
I
is
wanted to
pretty
talk
great.
about that, but I
No,
totally
that-
forgot.
that
It's
is
What
pretty
happens
good.
in Powers?
No, it's in the book we just read.
Oh, in Pluto.
In Pluto,
He's like, "You
talking to
stay here,
someone.
I'm gonna
He's like,
go,"
I'm gonna
and
go,
then he
and
just
just like
walks up and
launches
just like,
his Astro Boy boost off the ground, and I was like, yeah. I don't know. I really liked that because he can fly, and that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's got rocket feet.
I like that part. Anyway, I want to talk about 2 books that I think you should read because I am a cheater and I couldn't decide between the 2.
I will
One,
make the ultimate choice.
if you like Urasawa and you thought this was really cool, the book that he's most well known for is called Monster. But my favorite Urasawa story is 20th Century Boys. And I didn't recommend it over Pluto because I think Pluto is a much more straightforward story. I thought you would all enjoy it a lot more. 20th Century Boys is just like meandering all over the place, and there's like a mystery on top of mystery on top of enigma on top, and it would
Conundrum. There's some
it would have driven
conundrums
you
in
guys
there.
crazy. So I didn't recommend that to you guys for the
It would
long
have
run.
made Toby or Tobiah or Joe bring a gun and shoot us.
I think you guys would not have enjoyed it, and it's longer than Pluto. So I think the Pluto is a lot more universally approachable. So if you like that and you want some like crazy conspiracy story about secret societies and with time jumps and like a lot of really complicated conspiracy shit.
For the record, Cade, like Batman, I have a code against guns, but I definitely do own a baseball bat.
Also, Joe doesn't shoot people; he just hits them with his car. We've been over that before.
It is, yes.
But
Really, we're a fan of blunt instruments on this podcast, I guess, is the lesson here.
When were we talking about me just showing up? I just show up and hit you with my car.
it was when we were talking about Tower of Babel because you were
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"I have a file full of ways to kill you." I'm like, Joe, don't pretend. It's just hit us with your car. It's the same for everyone that you want to kill. Anyway. 20th Century Boys is a story of this group of friends that was they were like 7 years old or something, and they decided that the best way to like make the world a better place was this weird plan. And now they're all adults, and this is all happening, and they're like, one of us is carrying out this weird plan that we came up with as kids to like reshape the world or whatever, and we were just being weird kids, and it's all happening now. Which one of us was it? And so it's just kind of like...
That sounds incredibly weird.
It's weird, and I love it. And I think everybody should check it out. If you read this and you're like, Urasawa's art is awesome, and I want more, storytelling, like how Urasawa tells stories, definitely go check out 20th Century Boys. I really like it. The sequel is 21st Century Boys, but it's all just one story that goes through the whole thing. The other book I wanted to recommend is, if you like the sci-fi kind of futuristic aspects of this and you like manga, go read Akira. It was what I was going to bring instead of Pluto, and then decided last minute to bring Pluto. But Akira is one of the best sci-fi manga ever, in my opinion. It's really interesting. If you've seen the movie, you need to go read the manga, because the movie only contains the first 3 volumes of the manga. There are 6 volumes, so you only got half the story in the movie. It has a very different ending.
That is actually exactly the case with the manga that I'm going to recommend right now. And
Awesome.
also the manga that I was thinking about picking and didn't, because we just read a manga.
Yeah.
They made an
Manga,
anime.
manga,
It was
manga,
like the
manga,
first 2
manga.
volumes, and then the manga kept going, and all the stuff after the anime is way, way better.
Yeah.
Manga.
So go read Akira. Cade, what would you like to recommend to us if we liked Pluto?
Okay, well, I had to kind of think outside the box because I was at a loss. And then, so I ended up picking a manga, but it was a manga that kind of makes me feel the same way as I did reading Pluto, but doesn't really relate to Pluto, which is interesting. I chose One Piece.
Nice.
Because it's
Japan's most popular manga.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable read. I mean, it made me do the thing like with Pluto where like I just can't put it down. It's fun. There are some neat characters. And it's a story of adventures and pirates and yeah.
Really weird fruit.
And a kid made out of rubber.
And a witch.
And some pirates.
And
Going after
And
that.
boobies.
a
Going after
hugely
that.
implausible planet.
Yeah. They're going after that booty.
Pirate booty. Yeah.
yeah. So
Or lady booty.
it made
you don't
me
know.
That's true.
So I
Lady
thought
lady
Pluto
pirates.
was phenomenal, and one of the books that makes me feel the same way reading it is One Piece. So,
Nice.
oh, and my best friend Michael Malmquist keeps bugging me to bring it for a long run, and I keep telling him he should read Pluto. So
Nice.
it goes both ways.
Sweet.
Coolio.
All right.
Well, I guess it's a manga night.
Yeah.
So for my recommendation, if you like Pluto, obviously the thing that I really was most interested in was like the robots and like the weird sciencey bits and all that stuff. So the comic I'm recommending is
Atomic Robo.
Atomic Robo. No, Battle Angel Aelita by Yukito Kishiro. And it's going to take me a little just a moment to pitch it because I have to set up the setting of it. So imagine for a moment an object in orbit around the Earth. And from that object there extends basically an arm that goes down into the atmosphere. But the center of gravity of the thing is still up in orbit. So it's orbiting the Earth, but it's got a little pole thing extended down. So it looks like it's flying from the ground, but it's not. It's just the end of a really, really long object that's in orbit. So at the beginning of this series, there is the floating city of Typheres, which is at the end of an object like I just described. And right underneath that on the ground is the scrapyard, or it might be called the junkyard. It's been a while since I read it. But it's basically a city built on the refuse heap from this insanely advanced human city that's extending down from orbit. And at the beginning of the series, this doctor finds this old, beat-up torso of a cyborg that's like still alive, just in the junk that's been disposed of from the city. And it repairs her and brings her back to life, and it's this girl who he names Aelita, and she's lost all of her memories. And the series is about her and her adventures, first in the junkyard and then in other areas, basically trying to remember who she is and build a sense of identity and a sense of purpose and kind of discover what her goal in life is. And it's a really interesting story, and there's a lot of really interesting questions raised about the nature of what it means to be human and what it means to be a human with cyborg parts, and like, when do you stop being human? And they do things like switching bodies around because because people have like robot brains and stuff, and you can just switch your skull out and put it in a different body, and it's really interesting and fun, and there's a lot of cool martial arts and like super advanced, like 600 mile an hour martial arts, electromagnetic acceleration, cyborg fighting, and it's just really cool and fun. And
Sweet.
If you liked kind of the robot science fiction aspects of Pluto like I did, you might like Battle Angel Aelita.
Sweet. All right. Well, those are the recommendations. So if you like Pluto, read all of those. And Toby, would you like to tell us what we're reading for our next long run episode?
Sure. So I went back and forth a lot on what I was going to pick.
Yeah, I
pitched the first idea of the
nice.
long run, and I knew right away, like, Transmetropolitan had to be the first thing we talked about. And since then, I've been waiting for my turn to come back up, and I had no freaking idea what I was going to pick. I had so many options. And I was going to pick a manga, which I'm not even going to name it because I'm going to save it for next time.
Awesome.
It's my favorite manga ever.
Sweet.
Naruto.
And
Of course, Naruto.
I know what it is.
It's not Naruto. Joe, I'm sure, knows what it is. But instead, I picked a different comic, which is probably one of my oldest, most favorite comics. It was on my bookshelf when I was a really little kid. I've always loved it. And I just talked about it recently in a blog post, and we got a lot of hits off of that. So
Nice.
I know that there are people out there who are really interested in it. And the book that I've picked is ElfQuest by Richard and Wendy Penny.
How much of this are we going to be reading?
We're going to be reading what was the first 8 volumes when it was originally published in graphic novel format. It's the first 3 storylines. I only brought the first 2 books with me because they were actually pretty big and pretty beat up because I've had them since I was like no years old. The first one actually came out in, I think, 81, and I was born in 80. So they're just beat to hell and back. But the first 4 volumes are the first story, which is called The Quest. Volumes 6 and 7 are called Siege at Blue Mountain, which are the second story, and 7 and 8 are the third story, which is called Kings of the Broken Wheel. And what's really great about ElfQuest is if you go to elfquest.com, up at the top of the bar, there's a link that says read it now, and you can go and you can read every single ElfQuest story that has ever been published in color for free on their website.
And that's awesome, too, because this color is great, and when Dark Horse republished it, they published it in black and white.
Yeah, which is super shitty. They also published it really small.
It was like manga size.
Yeah, I've never actually read this in color, even though I've read the first 4 volumes.
So
And
either go find the trades that are big, like Toby has, that are in color, or
And completely out of print.
yeah, you can find them somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you can find them, but
But either read it like this or read it for free online, because I would recommend that over the manga-sized black and whites for sure.
But just a little about it. I mean, it's obviously about elves
What?
And questing.
No way.
And the first story is kind of about one group of elves who discover that they're not the only elves in this world. And they kind of set on this quest to find all the disparate tribes of elves wherever they've scattered, and ultimately to kind of rediscover the origins of their race on this world. It's really beautifully drawn. The colors are amazing. There's a lot of really interesting, weird story elements that I'm not going to get too far into because I really want you to discover them for yourself. But it was a story that I loved as a kid. It's a story that I still love as an adult, and I'm really anxious to hear what you guys think about it.
I think it goes without saying that if you have not yet read his blog post on ElfQuest, you're going to want to save it until after you read this. If you want to follow along.
I do kind of spoil revelations from book 4 in my blog post. So if you have not read it, don't go read it now. Wait until after you've read it.
And don't go and read it just because we told you not to, because that's just childish. All right? We're all adults here, except if you're not.
I like this. The ones that Toby has are the Star Blaze editions. So
yeah, that was the name of the publisher.
Yeah, this is one of the first indie books I remember hearing about because this was kind of at the in the beginnings of when indie comics were starting to become mainstream. Like in the 80s, people were starting to take note that there were comics published by people other than like the big guys like Archie and DC and Marvel. So
this first started coming out in the very late 70s. I think 79 was when the first issues started coming out. And it's weird because it's playing off of a lot of different ideas that don't get so much play. Because I mean, it really is coming out of like the late 60s and the 70s, like ecology and free love and like weird psychic powers and stuff. Like, it's playing in a space that not a lot of things play in these days. Because, I mean, they're kind of like, they're porny comics, like sex criminals.
Yeah.
Where, like, sex is kind of like the center gag of the thing or part of the premise. And, I mean, there are, to be perfectly honest, like a lot of sexual elements of this book that are just, I mean, it's almost like an undercurrent. And there are, frequent implications, although it's not often explicitly stated, that a lot of the elves are just naturally pansexual. And it's like never really this thing. Joe and I were just talking recently about Zot and how Zot was dealing with issues of homosexuality in the mid 80s and how that was a really big deal. And this never really directly goes into that too much, but those elements are definitely there and fairly obvious if you're reading it closely. So it's a really interesting artifact of its times.
Yeah, and definitely, very much a reflection of the era that it came out of. So cool to read and think about the era that it was in. Because, writers today are obviously writing from a reflection of our era. So things are a bit different.
And I know for a fact that it's one of show favorite Brandon Graham's preferred comics because he makes references to it in King City.
Oh, nice.
I remember when we recorded that episode, I was like, oh, that line, that's a reference to the ElfQuest. That's awesome.
Nice. And now after you read ElfQuest, you'll get all those references.
Now, I saw on the ElfQuest website, they were advertising for the final chapter. Is that one of the books that we're reading?
No. So the first 8 volumes are kind of a continuous storyline. And then I believe, and I may be a little bit off on this, after that, they started doing kind of side stories a little bit out of order and working with other artists. And I feel like the series took a little bit of a decline at that point.
Okay.
And then there's been a huge gap, and they are now coming back and finishing off the story of the series, basically, with the final quest.
Okay.
So we're reading, if you go onto the website, it's basically parts 1, 2, and 3. The Quest, Siege at Blue Mountain, and Kings of the Broken Wheel.
Cool.
And if somehow you magically find the trades, it's like volumes 1 through 8.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yep. Thank you for joining us on A Long Run.
Yeah, and be sure to tune into all of our regular weekly show, audio and video shows, and stay tuned for The Long Run, which will be in a couple months. And read ElfQuest.
Read ElfQuest. That's the most important thing.
Yep. All right, guys.
Along with everything else we tell you to read.
We will catch you next time. Are you done, Joe?
Yes.
All right. Bye, everybody.
I love you.
Bye.